Marcus Chun adjusted his rifle scope one last time, watching the alien patrol through the cracked window of what used to be New Shanghai's tallest building. The Zephyrian soldiers moved in perfect formation, their purple skin gleaming under the artificial lights they had installed throughout the conquered city. 3 years had passed since the Galactic Empire arrived on Earth with their massive fleets, demanding immediate surrender. Earth had lasted exactly 47 days against their technology. But Marcus and thousands like him never stopped fighting. Hidden in the ruins of humanity's greatest cities, they picked off alien patrols, sabotaged supply lines, and reminded the galaxy that humans didn't know how to quit. The Empire called them terrorists. Marcus called it Tuesday. His finger found the trigger as a Zephyrian commander stepped into his crosshairs. One shot, clean and quick. The alien dropped, and chaos erupted below as the patrol scrambled for cover. Marcus was already moving, sliding down the building's emergency stairs 3 at a time. He had maybe 2 minutes before their aircraft arrived. The underground tunnels beneath New Shanghai had become home to the human resistance. Marcus dropped through a hidden entrance just as the first energy blasts lit up the night sky above. His boots splashed in the ankle-deep water as he navigated the maze of passages that had once carried the city's internet cables. Sarah Kim was waiting at the central hub, her fingers dancing across a salvaged tablet. The former military communications specialist had become their eyes and ears, intercepting alien transmissions and coordinating strikes across the resistance network. Her face was grim when she looked up. "They're not just hunting you anymore, Marcus," she said, showing him the translated transmission. "High Command is getting tired of the resistance. They want to make an example." The message was clear. The Empire had identified Marcus as one of the most effective human snipers still operating. They weren't just putting a bounty on his head. They were planning something bigger, something that would break the spirit of human resistance once and for all. Marcus set down his rifle and studied the intel Sarah had gathered. The Empire's local commander, General Thano K, had requested permission to stage a public execution. Not just any execution, a live broadcast across the entire galaxy. They wanted every species in their empire to see what happened to those who defied their rule. "They're going to turn your death into entertainment," Sarah said quietly. "The whole galaxy will watch." Marcus nodded, understanding the implications. The Empire controlled over 300 worlds, encompassing dozens of species. A public execution of Earth's most wanted sniper would send a message that rebellion was futile. It would also demoralize the remaining human fighters scattered across Earth's ruins. But Marcus saw something else in the intelligence reports, something the aliens had missed in their arrogance. The Empire's communication networks were designed to reach every world simultaneously. Their quantum transmission arrays could broadcast a signal to 300 billion beings across the galaxy in real time. "Sarah," he said slowly, "what if we could hijack their broadcast?" She looked up confused. "What do you mean?" "They want to show the galaxy what happens when humans fight back. What if we showed them something different? What if we showed them what happens when you back a human into a corner?" The Resistance had been gathering intelligence on Empire facilities for 3 years. They knew where the communication hubs were located, how the security systems worked, and, most importantly, they had identified a critical weakness. The Empire's technology was advanced, but it was standardized across all their worlds. They used the same protocols, the same security measures, the same overconfident assumptions everywhere. Marcus pulled up the schematics Sarah had compiled. "The main transmission facility is here in the government district. If we could get inside during the broadcast, we could send our own message." "That's suicide," Sarah said. "The security around that place is impenetrable." "Not if they're all focused on the execution," Marcus replied. "Not if we give them exactly what they want." The plan that formed in Marcus's mind was insane. He would allow himself to be captured, knowing full well that it meant facing a very real execution. But while the Empire staged their grand spectacle, a small team of resistance fighters would infiltrate the transmission facility. They would use the Empire's own broadcast network to send a message to every world under their control. The message wouldn't be words. It would be coordinates, encrypted in a way that only other resistance movements would understand. Earth's fighters had developed techniques, tactics, and technologies for asymmetric warfare that could work on any world. They had learned how to fight an enemy with superior technology using nothing but determination, and ingenuity. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. You're talking about starting a galaxy-wide rebellion. I'm talking about giving every oppressed species the tools they need to fight back, Marcus said. The Empire thinks they're going to show the galaxy how to crush rebellion. Instead, we're going to show them how to spread it. The next few days would determine the fate of not just humanity, but every species living under the Empire's rule. Marcus began preparing for what might be his final mission, while Sarah assembled a team of the best infiltration specialists the Resistance had left. The Empire wanted a show. Marcus was going to give them one they would never forget. General Thano K stood before the massive holographic display in his command center, watching the feeds from across New Shanghai. The human sniper they called Marcus Chun had been unusually quiet for the past week. No attacks, no sabotage, no signs of the resistance activity that had plagued his occupation forces for 3 years. The Zephyrian general's 4 eyes scanned the tactical displays with growing satisfaction. His request to High Command had been approved. The public execution would proceed as planned, broadcast live to every world in the Empire. It would be the most watched event in galactic history. Sir, his aide approached with a data tablet. Intelligence reports suggest the human may be planning something. Our informants indicate unusual movement in the resistance tunnels. Thano K's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. Let them plan. Whatever they think they can accomplish will only make the spectacle more entertaining. The galaxy will see not just the execution of one terrorist, but the complete futility of human resistance. 3 kilometers away, Marcus Chin sat in a stolen maintenance uniform, watching the Empire's security patrols from a coffee shop that somehow still served synthetic brew. He had shaved his beard and dyed his hair, but more importantly, he had allowed himself to be seen. The Empire's surveillance algorithms would identify him within hours. His earpiece crackled with Sarah's voice. Marcus, are you sure about this? Once they take you, there's no going back. The team is in position, he asked quietly, pretending to read a news tablet. Anna's group reached the transmission facility. They're hidden in the maintenance levels. Chun and Rodriguez are standing by at the power grid. Everyone knows their roles. Marcus finished his synthetic coffee and stood up. Through the window, he could see the Empire's enforcement drones beginning to circle the area. Their facial recognition systems had found him. He walked outside and made no attempt to hide his face from the nearest security camera. The arrest was swift and efficient. 6 Zephyrian soldiers surrounded him within minutes, their energy weapons trained on his chest. Marcus raised his hands slowly, offering no resistance. The crowd of human civilians watched in shocked silence as Earth's most notorious sniper was loaded into an Empire transport. The interrogation chamber was exactly what Marcus had expected. Stark white walls, a single chair under harsh lighting, and the overwhelming presence of Imperial authority. General Thano K entered with ceremonial precision, his purple skin bearing the ritual scars that marked him as a veteran of dozens of conquered worlds. Marcus Chun, the general said, his translator rendering the words in perfect English. The ghost of New Shanghai. You have caused considerable trouble for my forces. Marcus said nothing, studying the alien's face. The Zephyrians were proud creatures, descended from ancient warrior castes. They respected strength, but despised what they saw as cowardice. His silence would be interpreted as defiance, which was exactly what he wanted. You will be executed tomorrow at solar zenith, Thano K continued. The entire galaxy will witness the end of human rebellion. Your species will serve as an example to others who might consider defying the Empire. You think killing one man will stop the resistance? Marcus finally spoke. Thano K's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. I think showing 300 billion beings what happens to terrorists will prevent future insurgencies. Your death will save countless lives by discouraging rebellion before it starts. Marcus leaned back in his chair, displaying the casual confidence that had made him legendary among the resistance. General, has anyone ever told you about human history? I'm familiar with your species' violent past. Then, you know we've never been very good at learning from examples. When you execute me tomorrow, you won't be ending anything. You'll be starting something that will spread to every world in your empire. The interrogation continued for hours, but Marcus revealed nothing of operational value. He spoke instead of human persistence, of the futility of trying to crush the will of people who had nothing left to lose. Thanoke grew increasingly frustrated with the humans' calm demeanor. Meanwhile, across the city, Sarah Kim's infiltration team was putting the final pieces of their plan into motion. Anna Volkov, a former Russian Special Forces operative, had led her team through the maintenance tunnels beneath the transmission facility. They were now positioned directly below the main broadcast chamber. The Empire's security was focused on preventing attacks from outside. They had never considered that someone might strike from within their own infrastructure. The humans had spent months mapping the underground networks that connected every major building in the government district. Chen Wei, a former electronics engineer, was stationed near the power distribution center. His job was simple but critical. At the exact moment of the execution, he would create a brief power fluctuation that would force the transmission system to reset. For exactly 17 seconds, the broadcast network would be vulnerable to outside signals. 17 seconds wasn't much time, but it was enough. The resistance had compressed terabytes of tactical data into a quantum burst transmission. Guerrilla warfare techniques, improvised weapons designs, communication protocols, and, most importantly, proof that the Empire could be fought successfully. Rodriguez, a former Mexican Marine, was positioned at the backup transmission relay. His job was to ensure that the Empire couldn't quickly cut the signal once they realized what was happening. The backup systems were located in a separate facility, and taking them offline would require manual intervention. As night fell over New Shanghai, Marcus was transferred to a holding cell in the government complex. The execution platform was being constructed in the central plaza, designed to accommodate the massive crowd the Empire expected to attend. Holographic projectors would ensure that every angle was captured for the Galactic broadcast. General Thanoke reviewed the security arrangements one final time. Orbital defense platforms would prevent any rescue attempt. Ground forces would secure a perimeter extending 20 blocks from the plaza. Air superiority fighters would patrol the skies. Nothing would be left to chance. The general had conquered 17 worlds for the Empire. He had overseen the subjugation of dozens of species. Tomorrow's execution would be his masterpiece, a demonstration of imperial power that would be remembered for generations. He had no idea that in less than 24 hours, his empire would begin to crumble. The humans had taught him to fear the strength of rebellion, but he had never learned to respect its intelligence. The Empire's greatest advantage, their vast communication network, was about to become their greatest vulnerability. Marcus Chun spent his final night in custody, not planning an escape, but calculating broadcast schedules. Tomorrow, when the Empire showed the galaxy how to crush human resistance, the resistance would show the galaxy how to spread like wildfire. The central plaza of New Shanghai buzzed with activity as dawn approached. Imperial engineers worked through the night to perfect their execution platform, a towering structure designed to ensure every being in the galaxy would have a clear view of human defeat. Holographic projectors surrounded the stage, while orbital satellites prepared to relay the signal across 300 worlds. Marcus Chun was awakened by the sound of boots in the corridor outside his cell. Through the narrow window, he could see the crowd already gathering in the plaza. Humans were required to attend. The Empire had made it clear that absence would be considered an act of rebellion. But Marcus also spotted other species in the crowd. Diplomatic observers, imperial officials, and representatives from dozens of worlds had come to witness this historic moment. General Thanoke entered the cell block wearing his full ceremonial armor. The purple metal gleamed under the artificial lights, inscribed with the names of every world he had conquered for the Empire. Marcus would be his 18th victory, though the general expected this one to be remembered above all others. "Are you prepared to face justice?" Thanoke asked, his translator rendering the words with mechanical precision. Marcus stood up slowly, meeting the alien's gaze. "I'm prepared to show the galaxy what humans are really made of." The procession through the government district drew massive crowds. Humans lined the streets in sullen silence, while Imperial troops maintained order with visible weapons. Marcus walked calmly between his guards, his head held high. He had refused the traditional blindfold, insisting that he wanted to see everything. What he was really doing was counting security positions and noting the exact timing of their movements. Sarah had been right about Imperial procedure. They followed protocol to the letter, which meant their patterns were predictable. Every guard rotation, every checkpoint, every surveillance sweep happened exactly on schedule. In the maintenance tunnels beneath the transmission facility, Anna Volkov checked her chronometer. The execution was scheduled for solar zenith, which would occur in exactly 43 minutes. Her team had been in position for 6 hours, waiting for the moment when the galaxy's attention would be focused on the plaza. The Empire's transmission facility was a marvel of technology, capable of sending signals across impossible distances instantaneously. The main broadcast chamber contained quantum relay arrays that connected to similar facilities on every Imperial world. What the aliens didn't realize was that their standardized technology made the entire network vulnerable to a single point of infiltration. Chun Wei crouched beside the power distribution junction, his portable computer linked to the facility's electrical grid. His screen showed the massive power draw as the broadcast systems came online. The execution would be transmitted to over 300 billion beings simultaneously, requiring every available relay to handle the signal load. Rodriguez confirmed his position at the backup transmission center. The facility was lightly guarded. After all, who would attack a communication relay during a public execution? The Empire's security was focused on protecting the plaza, not their information infrastructure. As Marcus was led onto the execution platform, he could see the vast crowd stretching beyond the plaza into the surrounding streets. Massive holographic displays showed his face to those who couldn't see the stage directly. Orbital feeds provided overhead views, while ground cameras captured every angle. General Thano K stepped forward to address not just the crowd, but the entire galaxy. Citizens of the Galactic Empire, today you witness the fate of those who defy legitimate authority. This human terrorist has murdered Imperial citizens and incited rebellion against lawful rule. His execution serves as a reminder that the Empire's justice reaches every world, every species, every individual who threatens galactic peace. The crowd was silent, but Marcus could feel their anger. 3 years of occupation had not broken the human spirit. If anything, it had hardened their resolve. They might not be able to fight back openly, but they could remember, and they could wait. Do you have any final words? Thano K asked, following the ceremonial protocol. Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly across the plaza. Yeah, Ido. The Empire thinks they're showing the galaxy how to end rebellion. Instead, they're about to learn why you never corner a human unless you're prepared for the consequences. Thano K's mandibles clicked with amusement. Empty threats from a doomed terrorist. Not threats, Marcus said quietly. Just a fact. Humans don't surrender. We adapt. We learn. We overcome. And when we're done, we share what we've learned with anyone else who's tired of being slaves. The countdown began. Imperial law required a formal execution sequence, giving the condemned exactly 60 seconds to prepare for death. Marcus used those seconds to scan the crowd one final time, noting the positions of resistance members who had managed to infiltrate the security perimeter. In the transmission facility, Anna's team prepared for action. The quantum relays were at full power, channeling the execution broadcast to every world in the Empire. The moment had come to turn the Empire's greatest propaganda victory into their worst nightmare. Chun Wei's fingers moved across his keyboard with practiced precision. The power fluctuation had to be perfectly timed, too early and the security systems would detect it, too late and the broadcast would be complete. His screen showed the power grid reaching peak load as billions of beings across the galaxy tuned in to watch. Rodriguez confirmed that the backup systems were ready to fail. The Empire's redundant communication networks were designed to prevent accidental outages, but they weren't prepared for coordinated sabotage by someone who understood their architecture. As the countdown reached its final seconds, Marcus Chun stood straighter than he had in years. He wasn't just facing death. He was facing the moment when 3 years of preparation would either succeed spectacularly or fail completely. The fate of not just humanity, but every oppressed species in the galaxy hung in the balance. General Thano K raised his ceremonial blade, the ancient Zephyrian weapon that would deliver the final blow. The energy field along its edge hummed with power, designed to ensure a quick and clean death. In his 3 decades of service to the Empire, he had used it to execute dozens of rebels and terrorists. The moment of execution arrived with surgical precision. As Thano K brought the blade down, Chun Wei triggered his power surge. The transmission facility's lights flickered for exactly 17 seconds, just long enough for the quantum relays to reset their security protocols. In that brief window, Anna Volkov's team transmitted their prepared signal. Terabytes of resistance data flooded into the Imperial communication network, riding the same quantum channels that carried the execution broadcast. Instead of just showing Marcus Chen's death, the signal now carried something far more dangerous. Instructions for rebellion, coded in mathematical sequences that any intelligent species could decode, spread across 300 worlds in the time it took General Thainoke's blade to fall. The blade fell, and Marcus Chun died exactly as planned. But in that same instant, something unprecedented happened across the galaxy. The quantum transmission carrying his execution also carried encoded data packages that began unpacking themselves on Imperial communication networks throughout space. Mathematics was the universal language, and the Resistance had embedded their messages in simple numerical sequences that any species could recognize and decode. General Thainoke stepped back from the platform, satisfied that justice had been served. The crowd in New Shanghai remained eerily quiet, but that was expected. The humans had just witnessed the death of their greatest symbol of resistance. Their silence was the sound of defeat. However, in the Imperial Communication Center, technician alerts began flashing across monitoring stations. Chief Communications Officer Veltar, a Zephyrian with 30 years of experience, noticed the anomalies first. Data packets were appearing on networks across the Empire, but they weren't part of the official broadcast. Sir, Veltar approached General Thainoke as he descended from the platform. We have a situation with the transmission network. Unknown data is propagating through our quantum relays. Thainoke paused, his four eyes narrowing. What kind of data? We're not certain. The packets are encrypted, but they're spreading to every world simultaneously. Whatever it is, it's using our own broadcast infrastructure to distribute itself. Across the galaxy, Resistance members embedded within various species began receiving the signals. On Kepler 442b, a mining world where the silicon-based crystalline were forced to extract precious metals for Imperial use, worker Zinc 7743 noticed mathematical patterns appearing on his extraction equipment displays. The numbers weren't random. They formed sequences that described pressure points in Imperial armor, weak spots in their energy weapons, and communication frequencies their security forces used. On Proxima Centauri b, the aquatic fluid had been conquered only 2 years earlier. In their underwater cities, Scholar of Currents Wave Upon Shore was analyzing the strange numerical transmissions when she realized they contained blueprints. Not for weapons, but for something far more valuable, communication jammers that could blind Imperial sensors, explosive compounds that could be made from common mining chemicals, and, most importantly, organizational structures for coordinating resistance activities. The genius of human resistance was not in creating new weapons, but in sharing the hard-learned lessons of asymmetric warfare. Every technique that Marcus Chun and his fighters had developed through 3 years of desperate struggle was now spreading across 300 worlds simultaneously. In the Imperial Command Center on New Shanghai, the scope of the infiltration was becoming clear. Communications Officer Veltar's displays showed the data infection spreading through their networks like a virus. Every attempt to purge the systems only caused the encoded packages to replicate faster. Shut down the quantum relays, General Thainoke ordered. Sir, that would cut communication with the entire Empire. Every world would be isolated. Do it now. But it was too late. The 17-second window had been enough. The data packages had already propagated through the network, copying themselves to local storage systems on hundreds of worlds. Shutting down the quantum relays now would only prevent Imperial High Command from coordinating their response. On Earth, Sarah Kim monitored the situation from her underground command post. Her screens showed successful transmission confirmations from across the galaxy. The Resistance database was spreading faster than any previous information transfer in galactic history. Phase 1 complete, she announced to the remaining Resistance cells. Now comes the hard part. The hard part was staying alive long enough for the information to take root. Sarah knew that General Thainoke would respond with brutal efficiency once he realized what had happened. Every known Resistance member on Earth would be hunted down within hours. But the goal had never been to save themselves. The goal was to plant seeds of rebellion that would grow into something the Empire couldn't contain. On the gas mining platforms of Titan 7, the methane-breathing wisp had endured Imperial occupation for 5 years. Their unique physiology made them excellent workers in hazardous atmospheric conditions, but terrible soldiers by Imperial standards. The Empire had dismissed them as incapable of organized resistance. Winsinger through the clouds was analyzing atmosphere pressure readings when mathematical sequences appeared on her monitoring equipment. As she decoded the patterns, she realized she was looking at instructions for sabotage techniques specifically adapted to gas processing facilities. The humans had somehow known that different environments would require different approaches. Within 6 hours of the execution broadcast, the first reports of coordinated resistance activity began reaching Imperial command centers. On Kepler 442b, crystal mining operations were disrupted by explosions that seemed to target the most efficient extraction equipment. On Proxima Centauri b, underwater communication arrays mysteriously lost connection with orbital facilities. On Titan 7, atmosphere processors began experiencing cascade failures that made the stations uninhabitable for Imperial supervisors, while somehow sparing the WISP workers. General Thano K stared at the tactical displays in growing disbelief. 17 different worlds were reporting simultaneous resistance activity, all using techniques that had never been seen before. The rebels seemed to know exactly how Imperial technology worked, where its weak points were, and how to exploit them with locally available materials. "This is impossible," he said. "These species have never shown coordinated behavior before. They have no prior military experience, no unified command structure." "Sir," his intelligence chief approached with a grim expression. "We've decoded portions of the transmitted data. It's not just tactical information. It includes complete organizational blueprints for resistance networks, communication protocols for species with different sensory capabilities, and psychological profiles of Imperial command structures." The truth hit Thano K like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just been fighting for 3 years. They had been studying. Every encounter with Imperial forces, every captured piece of equipment, every interrogation had been an opportunity to learn. They had analyzed Imperial tactics, studied their technology, and identified systematic weaknesses that could be exploited by any species. "The execution was a trap," he said slowly. "Yes, sir. They allowed Chun to be captured, knowing we would want to make an example of him. They used our own propaganda broadcast to distribute their data. On the 17th world, to report resistance activity, the insectoid hive had received the mathematical transmissions through their collective consciousness network. Queen Mind Prime of the Nest quickly realized that the data contained something unprecedented: detailed instructions for maintaining individual identity while coordinating group actions. The Empire had always feared the hive because of their natural ability to act as a unified organism. But that same unity had made them vulnerable to Imperial mind control techniques. The human data included countermeasures, ways to compartmentalize information, and maintain resistance even when individual members were captured. By the time General Thano K realized the full scope of what was happening, 47 Imperial worlds were experiencing coordinated resistance activities. The number wasn't random, it was symbolic. 47 days was how long Earth had lasted against the initial Imperial invasion. The humans were reminding the galaxy that even brief resistance could have lasting consequences. Marcus Chin's execution had lasted 17 seconds from the fall of the blade to his confirmed death. But in those same 17 seconds, the quantum transmission had delivered 47 terabytes of resistance data to 300 billion beings across the galaxy. The empire that had taken centuries to build was about to discover what humans had learned in 3 years of desperate fighting. Rebellions don't die when you kill rebels. They spread. 47 minutes after Marcus Chin's execution, the Galactic Empire faced something it had never encountered in its 3-century history: simultaneous rebellion on every major world. The cascade began on the mining worlds, where the encoded human data had provided precise instructions for targeting critical infrastructure. Crystal extractors on Kepler 442b shut down in perfect sequence, creating a domino effect that crashed the entire planetary mining grid. The crystalline workers, who had seemed so passive for 5 years, suddenly demonstrated an understanding of Imperial technology that shocked their overseers. On the agricultural worlds, the plant-based verdant used the human sabotage techniques to contaminate food shipments destined for Imperial garrisons. But they went beyond simple destruction. They had decoded portions of the data that taught them to leave the local food supplies untouched while making Imperial rations toxic to their specific biology. The aquatic worlds proved even more devastating to Imperial control. The fluid had always been dismissed as incapable of coordinated action outside their water environments. But the human data included detailed instructions for constructing improvised weapons from underwater mining equipment. Within hours, every Imperial underwater facility in the Proxima Centauri system was either destroyed or captured. General Thanoke watched his galactic display in stunned silence as world after world shifted from green to red. Imperial garrison after Imperial garrison went silent. What made it worse was that each rebellion seemed perfectly adapted to local conditions and species capabilities. How did they know? He asked his intelligence chief. How did the humans know about our operations on worlds they've never visited? The answer came from an unexpected source. Junior communications technician Hextai, a young Zephyrian analyst, had been tracking the pattern of the data transmission. Sir, I believe they didn't know specifics about other worlds. They provided adaptable frameworks. Explain. The human data includes multiple variations of each technique, designed for different environments, technologies, and species types. They created a comprehensive guide that any intelligent species could adapt to their local situation. General Thanoke realized the horrifying truth. The humans hadn't just shared their specific tactics, they had shared their methodology. They had taught the entire galaxy how to think like rebels. On Earth, Sarah Kim monitored the galactic reports from her hidden command center. The screens showed resistance activity spreading faster than Imperial forces could respond. Every world that achieved even partial success was inspiring others to act. The psychological effect was exactly what Marcus had predicted. Status report from the Titan's sector. One of her operators called out. The Wisp have taken control of 3 gas processing stations. They're offering fuel to any world that declares independence from the Empire. The Hive Collective on Kepler 186F has seized their orbital defense platforms, another reported. They're using Imperial weapons to defend newly liberated worlds. Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Marcus Chun had died as planned, but his death had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. The Empire was facing rebellion not from a single species or world, but from a coordinated network of every oppressed population simultaneously. The most devastating reports came from the core Imperial worlds. The species that had been conquered earliest and seemed most integrated into Imperial society were proving to be the most dangerous rebels. They understood Imperial systems better than anyone, and they were using that knowledge with ruthless efficiency. On Zephyr Prime, the Imperial homeworld, something unthinkable was happening. The slave species that maintained Imperial infrastructure had received the human transmissions and were systematically shutting down essential services. Power grids failed in sequence. Transportation networks collapsed. Communication arrays went dark. The Zephyrian ruling class suddenly found themselves trapped on their own world, unable to coordinate their response to the galactic uprising. Emperor Zethmor himself, supreme ruler of the Galactic Empire, stood in his throne room watching holographic displays that showed his empire crumbling in real time. 3 centuries of conquest were being undone in less than an hour. Your supremacy, his military advisor approached with obvious reluctance. We've lost contact with over 200 worlds. Our orbital defense platforms around the core systems are either captured or destroyed. The rebellion appears to be coordinated through some kind of distributed command structure we don't understand. The Emperor's ancient eyes focused on the tactical display showing Earth. 1 world, 1 species. How do they do this? The answer was visible in the decoded fragments of the human transmission. The humans had done something the Empire had never considered possible. They had weaponized information itself. Not just military intelligence or technical specifications, but the fundamental knowledge of how to resist oppression. They had shared the psychology of rebellion. How to maintain hope in impossible circumstances, how to coordinate action without centralized command, how to turn an oppressor's strengths into weaknesses. They had created a virus of freedom that spread through the Empire's own communication networks. The final blow came exactly 47 minutes after Marcus Chin's execution. On the prison world of Tartarus 9, where the Empire's most dangerous political prisoners were held, the human data had provided escape protocols specifically designed for maximum security facilities. The prisoners who escaped weren't just rebels and terrorists. They were the former leaders of conquered worlds, military commanders who had fought the Empire's expansion, scientists who had refused to serve imperial interests. Within minutes of their liberation, they were broadcasting their own messages across the galaxy, coordinating the rebellion and providing strategic leadership. Emperor Zethmore watched his throne room displays go dark one by one as communication relays across the galaxy fell silent. The empire that had once ruled 300 worlds was fragmenting into hundreds of independent systems, each defended by species that had learned the human art of asymmetric warfare. "Your supremacy," his aide whispered. "What are your orders?" The emperor looked at the single remaining display, which showed Earth hanging in space like a small blue marble. The humans had done more than defeat the Galactic Empire. They had made the concept of Galactic Empire impossible. They had taught every species in known space that oppression could be resisted, that technology could be turned against its creators, and that even the most powerful military force was vulnerable to coordinated rebellion. "Contact Earth," he said quietly. "Request terms for surrender." On Earth, Sarah Kim received the transmission request from the Imperial Throne World. She looked around at the handful of resistance fighters who remained in their underground command center. These few dozen humans had just toppled a galactic civilization through nothing more than the sharing of knowledge. She opened the communication channel and delivered humanity's response to the empire that had conquered them. "We don't negotiate with oppressors, but we'll be happy to teach you how to be free." The Galactic Empire died 47 minutes after they executed Marcus Chun, not because of military defeat, but because they had shown the galaxy how to kill ideas. And humans, as they learned too late, specialized in making ideas bulletproof. In the years that followed, the galaxy settled into a new equilibrium based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced subjugation. The Human Resistance Network evolved into a galactic alliance of free worlds, each contributing their unique abilities to mutual defense and prosperity. Marcus Chin's final shot had hit its target after all. He had aimed not at a person or a building, but at the heart of tyranny itself. And, like every shot he had ever taken, it had found its mark with deadly precision.